The movie opens in a suburban home, where we see a man named Christian carefully cooking a steak. Once he's done, he divides the dish into two portions, placing one on a plate, and the other in an iron bowl. Christian then puts the bowl on the floor and commands his dog, Frank, to eat. Shockingly, we discover that Frank is not a typical dog, but rather a human dressed and acting as one. He excitedly begins eating the food. During this, Christian checks his Tinder profile and scrolls through several blondes until he comes across a woman named Sigrid. He finds her very attractive, so he promptly sends her a super like. We then proceed to see Christian's typical day, which includes taking care of Frank by giving him snacks and cleaning his teeth. He soon receives notification that Sigrid has also liked him.
Spit.
Later that night, Christian sends a text to Sigrid before falling asleep. In the morning, Frank approaches him in bed and awakens him with panting and sniffing sounds. An amused Christian then gives him his breakfast. He also notices that Sigrid has replied to his message, and starts chatting with her. They spend the entire day talking, and she eventually invites him to meet. The next day, we see Christian dressed in a business suit for his date, and he asks Frank how he looks, but the latter just whimpers. After getting ready, Christian kisses his human dog goodbye and leaves the house. He soon arrives at a posh restaurant, and waits for his date. But despite waiting for a long time, she doesn't show up, leaving him frustrated. After some time, Christian decides to leave, when Sigrid suddenly shows up in her sweatpants. She apologizes for being late, and they engage in a casual conversation. However, Sigrid suddenly begins using her phone, which seems a little impolite to him. He wonders if it's important, but she apologizes, saying that it's just a bad habit. Following this, Sigrid reveals that she's a student, and also works part-time as a cashier. She then asks what he does, to which Christian nervously admits that he isn't doing anything right now. He also confesses that he's a bit antisocial and struggles to get along with people, unlike her, who seems very outgoing and carefree. As evening falls, Christian musters all his courage to invite Sigrid to his house. She promptly agrees and, upon their arrival, Sigrid is blown away by the luxurious house, and realizes that Christian is not an average guy. Christian pours wine for her, and reveals that his parents are dead, and he inherited the house from them. In turn, Sigrid reveals that her parents divorced when she was a child, so she's not close to them. Here, Christian reveals that he has a dog as well. Sigrid is excited to hear this and inquires about the breed, but Christian responds that it's a bit complicated, and that she'll understand when she meets him. Meanwhile, we see Frank listening to their conversation from the door. As the two continue talking, Christian suddenly takes the initiative to kiss her, and they start making love, while Frank creepily observes everything. When Sigrid wakes up the next morning, she notices Frank in front of her. This scares her shitless, but Christian acts as if nothing is strange. Sigrid is shaken to see a man dressed and acting like a dog. She asks Christian what's happening, and who this person is. However, he responds that it's his pet, and acts as if it is a normal thing. Terrified, Sigrid immediately leaves the house, saying she has some work. Frank tries to explain the situation, but Sigrid refuses to listen to any of it. Instead, she asks Christian to give her a ride to her place. When Sigrid arrives at her apartment, she meets her roommate, Aurora. The latter asks how the date went, and Sigrid is filled with mixed thoughts. She reveals that the guy was attractive and they got along really well. However, the strange part is that he has a pet who is a person dressed in a dog costume. This shocks Aurora and she asks to see a photo of the man. And as soon as she does, she recognizes the guy as the son of a famous multimillionaire. Aurora can't believe her friend went on a date with such a rich man. Even Sigrid is surprised, as she was unaware of this information. Next, the two friends watch a video on YouTube explaining a term called puppy play, where people dress up and embody the characteristics of a dog. Sigrid finds it strange, but Aurora insists that people can do whatever they want as long as they don't harm others. She urges Sigrid not to be so narrow-minded and let this handsome millionaire slip away because of her prejudices. After this, Sigrid begins to reflect on her friend's advice, right when she receives a call from Christian, who wants to make amends. She also apologizes for leaving so abruptly, so Christian reassures her that it's his fault for not explaining everything beforehand. To make it up to her, he invites her to dinner at his place tomorrow, which she gladly accepts. The following day, we see Aurora and Sigrid studying, but Sigrid appears distracted. Sigrid reveals that she and Christian have patched things up, and he has invited her to dinner. This excites Aurora, and she jokes that if Sigrid marries him, she could live off his fortune, and won't have to study anymore. Not long after, Christian arrives to pick her up, and they head to his house. As they enjoy dinner, Sigrid asks about the human dog, so Christian explains that, while it may appear strange to her, it is completely Frank's choice to be like this. He doesn't have anyone else in his life, and wants Christian to take care of him. Sigrid understands his situation and asks if she can meet Frank. Christian agrees, but warns her not to treat him like a human but as a real dog. Although Sigrid is scared, she decides to give him a chance and pets him. But then, Frank climbs onto her lap like an overjoyed dog and starts sniffing her. This makes Sigrid very uncomfortable, so Christian scolds Frank and orders him to back off. Christian appears upset about what happened, so he offers to take Sigrid home, but she prefers to stay with him and accepts this crazy situation. Sigrid then asks how the two of them met, so Christian explains that he met Frank in his childhood, and that both of them were loners. He technically had friends because he had expensive toys and sweets. But once that stopped, everyone left his side except Frank, making him his true friend. Sigrid spends the night once again, and the next morning, Christian surprises her with breakfast in bed. Shortly after, he brings Frank in, saying the dog wants to apologize for yesterday's actions. Sigrid is slightly spooked by this, so she promptly forgives him. She then realizes that she's getting late for class, so Christian drives her to college. In the next scene, Aurora invites Sigrid to hang out with their friends, but our girl apologizes and says she has plans with Christian. Aurora advises Sigrid not to be too easy, because rich guys like him are used to getting what they want. Later, when Sigrid goes to see Christian, he shows her his collection of books that belong to his mother. During this, Sigrid suddenly remembers her friend's advice, and asks him to drive her home since night is falling. But Christian insists that she stay at his place, and in the end, she ends up complying. Later on, Christian tells her that Frank has been through a lot, and that no one has been there for him. He admits that he doesn't understand why Frank chose to live as a dog, but he still supports him. Christian then suggests a trip to the countryside with Frank and him, which Sigrid agrees to. The next morning, Aurora jokes with Sigrid about playing hard to get, and they both hug before Sigrid leaves for her trip with Christian. The three of them set off on their trip, leaving the city behind. After a long drive, they arrive at a beautiful house in the middle of the forest. Sigrid is amazed by the location and decoration. But during dinner, she keeps scrolling through her phone, which irritates Christian. He suggests that they spend time together without the distraction for just this weekend. Sigrid is a bit hesitant, but eventually hands him the phone, which he places in a box, and locks somewhere. In the evening, we see Sigrid and Frank playing in the living room, while Christian watches them with delight. He then heads to the kitchen to get some wine. But then, during this time, Sigrid is stunned by the revelation, and at the same time, Christian returns with the wine. She's still processing what she just heard. Overwhelmed by the situation, she says she's too tired, and heads to bed upstairs. Sigrid wakes up very early in the morning and notices that Christian is still sleeping. She quietly makes her way downstairs and tries to escape. However, when she reaches the front door, she is shocked to find it locked. Sigrid begins to search for the keys, but she's unfortunately discovered by Christian. He explains that he always locks the door for safety, and asks what she's doing. The girl nervously responds she wanted to get some fresh air, so Christian accompanies her outside. Sigrid then asks Christian for her own key, saying she doesn't like to wake him up. But he explains that he only has one copy, and assures her that he doesn't mind being disturbed. He then proceeds to kiss her. Sigrid is so disgusted that she immediately vomits upon returning home. During breakfast, Christian notices how disturbed Sigrid is. She doesn't eat anything, and requests for her phone. Christian refuses as expected, but she claims that her mother is sick, and simply wants to check on her. Upon hearing this, Christian reluctantly brings the phone, but calls Mom himself and puts it on loudspeaker. This leaves poor Sigrid with no choice but to nervously start talking. From their conversation, it quickly becomes evident that Mom is fine and healthy. Christian then says he's disappointed with Sigrid for lying. He thinks she's addicted to the phone and takes it away from her again. Soon after, Sigrid asks her boyfriend if she can take Frank for a walk. Christian agrees without hesitation, and the two head out for a walk in the forest. After reaching a bit further, Sigrid asks Frank if she should remove his leash so he can walk normally, but he says she's being too loud and tells her to be quiet. He then speaks in a low voice and warns her that Christian is probably observing them. Frank asks if she has a plan, and Sigrid reveals that they could run away right now. But Frank warns that Christian is ready for such a situation, and that the only way out is to kill him. This freaks Sigrid out, and she asserts that she would never do anything like that. Shortly after, they return to the house, and Christian finds out that Frank hasn't gone to the bathroom. He decides to handle it himself and takes him outside. Meanwhile, Sigrid seizes this opportunity and grabs a kitchen knife. She quickly heads upstairs to the bedroom, and hides it under her pillow. But moments later, Christian unexpectedly appears, saying he wants to change the sheets. A terrified Sigrid offers to do it herself since he does all the housework. Christian is hesitant at first as he expects everything to be perfect, but eventually agrees. After changing the sheets, she heads to the shower. But later, she is called by Christian, who says he wants to talk. She nervously steps out, and Sigrid fears he has discovered the knife, but it turns out Christian found a wrinkle in the sheet. He yells at her, saying she promised not to leave imperfections. But Christian soon laughs, and says he's just joking. As if that wasn't enough, he starts kissing her and tries to get intimate. Sigrid is reluctant and says she's wet, but he tries to force himself on her. In the end, an enraged Sigrid slaps him hard. Christian feels very embarrassed by this, but he simply leaves to prepare dinner. In the next scene, we see the two of them having an awkward dinner. Sigrid compliments the wine, and inquires about Frank, to which Christian responds that he is asleep. Shortly after, she tries to get up, but suddenly feels dizzy, and falls unconscious, so Christian immediately puts her in bed. Sigrid wakes up early the next morning, and frantically searches for the knife under her pillow. To her horror, it's not there anymore. All of a sudden, Christian wakes up, and says he wants to show her something. He then takes her downstairs, where he plays a recording of the conversation in which Frank asks Sigrid to kill him. He also pulls out the knife she hid, and says he's very disappointed in her. Christian reveals that, even though he could have tied her up, he decided not to because he still considers her to be trustworthy. Next, Christian takes her to a back room, where it is revealed that he has kept Frank in a cage. He says that he didn't need the recording, because the loyal dog confessed everything afterward. He then tells Sigrid that, unlike the dog, she will receive her punishment for betrayal. After this, Christian opens Frank's cage, and even takes off his mask. He begins to pet him, praising how good a dog he is, but Frank takes advantage of the situation and bites Christian, leading to a fight between them. Witnessing this, Sigrid abandons Frank to his fate and immediately steals the keys to escape the house. She runs into the forest and starts screaming for help. Christian is about to strangle Frank to death, but he finally releases the poor guy after he promises not to fight back again. However, he soon notices Sigrid has escaped. Frank apologizes for causing this, but it only makes Christian angrier. He scolds him for speaking like a human, and decides to punish him. Following this, he drags Frank to the nearby barn, while the poor guy continues to scream and beg for mercy. The insane guy ties him to a chair, and blindfolds him. He then shoves a gag in Frank's mouth, and puts headphones around his ears. After this, Christian proceeds to pour water on him. He then puts a plastic bag over Frank's head and suffocates him. On the other hand, Sigrid can't find her way out of the forest, so she collapses on the ground and begins to cry. Back at the barn, Frank almost dies due to the lack of oxygen, so Christian finally removes the bag. He then locks Frank in a cage, and puts on the headphones himself. After this, Christian tortures him by playing loud music through big speakers all around the barn. He starts pounding on the cage, and barbarically yells for Frank to start barking. Meanwhile, Sigrid hears the loud music and feels really bad for the damn dog. So, she gathers her courage and decides to head back and save him. Sigrid grabs a large piece of wood and prepares to enter the barn to confront Christian. In the meantime, Christian moves on to the next punishment, which is slapping the dog's ass multiple times. Upon her arrival, Sigrid is horrified to see him slapping Frank's ass and torturing him. Determined to end this, she sneaks up behind the crazy loner and strikes him hard in the head. The blow causes a serious injury, and Christian immediately collapses on the floor. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Sigrid tries to help Frank escape. The weak dog is so physically and mentally damaged that he can barely stand. And unfortunately, Christian recovers just in time and strikes both of them hard in the head, knocking them out. Overcome with frustration, he collapses on the ground and begins to cry like a child. In the next scene, some time has passed, and Christian is preparing breakfast. He's still at the forest house, and now Frank is no longer given human food. Christian takes a bowl of food to the room, where Frank is confined in a cage. After this, he heads to the barn, where Sigrid turns out to be his new pet. She is wearing a dog costume of her own and is fully complying, showing no signs of defiance. He gives her the food and promises that if she behaves well, she will be allowed to sleep in the house. Christian then returns to the house and lets a dog out of its cage. He prepares a third bowl of dog food and places it on the floor. Moments later, to our horror, a poor little baby crawls in, dressed in a dog costume, and starts eating the food with his hands. And this is where the movie ends.